you are an unstoppable and uncontrollable force. So that tsunami is going to obliterate everything. So just focus on being a tsunami and do not let anything stop you from obtaining your end goal, whether that be prolonged recovery, whether it be starting your own business, healthy relationships. Consider yourself a tsunami. Don't let anything stop you.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Recovery Couch, where real stories lead to real healing. Today's guest is Josh Johnson. Josh grew up in a good home, but from an early age, Josh noticed substance abuse patterns on his mother's side. While Josh's father's side of the family modeled spiritual stability, Josh found himself drawn to the chaos that he saw elsewhere. In 2012, Josh was diagnosed with testicular cancer, and he underwent major surgeries. He was prescribed pain medication, which slowly turned into misuse. When the prescriptions ran out, Josh turned to street drugs, and eventually his addiction led him to prison for robbery. But prison wasn't the end of Josh's story. It became the place where his transformation began. So sit back and enjoy this episode after a word from our sponsor. This episode of the Recovery Couch is brought to you by Greg Swartz at Remax Victory and Affiliates. Greg brings heart, hustle, and honesty to every deal. Call Greg at 937-477-8975 today and tell him the Recovery Couch sent you. Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Recovery Couch, where we deliver unapologetic, real, faith-based stories and messages covered by the blood of Jesus. The Recovery Couch is a space where we speak from the heart. We don't use filters because Psalm 139 verse 4 reminds us that God knows our words before we ever speak them. And Romans 5:8 tells us that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. That's why the Recovery Couch exists, to meet people exactly where they are, because here we believe when you offer someone a place to be real, you offer them a space to heal. Today on the Recovery Couch, I'm so excited to be joined by my good friend Josh Johnson. Josh is currently 12 years sober and works as a peer recovery specialist. His addiction began after a cancer diagnosis in 2012 when he was prescribed pain medication. And what started as taking more than prescribed quickly escalated into crushing and snorting the medicine. Between the ages of 23 and 33, Josh was in and out of prison, not because of drugs alone, but because his mental health went untreated for so long. Today, Josh is living proof of what's possible when recovery addresses both addiction and mental health. This conversation is honest. This conversation is important. So let's please give a warm welcome to our guest today, Josh Johnson. Josh, how you doing, brother?
Doing great, man. Living the dream, literally. I never thought that I would be here where I am now, just from all the hardships that I had to deal with to get to this point. It's truly a blessing every day that I wake up and I'm able to, go to work and help people that I relate so much to.
So what I hear there is you love your job. You've been called to a mission and you love your mission. So, but tell us about the early stages of your life where you were dealing with pain and with traumas and how you coped.
So I grew up in a pretty good household. My mom and dad, they worked my whole life growing up. It was me and my brother. Me and my brother were only 3 years apart, so he was always like my best friend growing up. It was just me and him against the world. And I think honestly, it all started like seeing my mom's family. My dad's family, they're very religious. They're very centered in Christianity, and they try to do their best every day. Everybody has their shortcomings, obviously. My mom's family is the complete opposite. I love them to death. but there was a lot of addiction and, alcoholism and other drugs and not following the law, as they say. And as a child, I kind of idolized that. And I was like, oh, they're outlaws. They're super cool. They don't care what anybody thinks. Like, I idolized that a lot. And so growing up, like, I was always kind of straight laced, and like I was really good in school. I had excellent grades. I graduated, and I thought like my life was set. I was gonna be able to go do things and become something. Like go to college. I wanted to be a lawyer at one point, and then in 2012, it was a year after my daughter was born. I was um I was diagnosed with testicular cancer, and looking back now, testicular cancer has a high success rate when it comes to survival and everything. But at the time, I'm 22 years old, and I was told, "Hey, you have cancer." I automatically looked at it as like a death sentence because 3 years prior to that, my aunt passed away from breast cancer. So I was automatically like, "All right, so I don't have much time. I'm gonna live my life the way I want to live it." And there was pain. Obviously, there's pain involved because I had to have my right testicle removed. I had to have a full abdominal lymph node dissection where they cut me completely open from my right below my belly button right to the bottom of my pectoral. And they pulled out organs, and then they dissected 14 lymph nodes. Yeah, I through the recovery with that, I was in the hospital for 5 days for that one, and I was in excruciating pain. Um, wow, I didn't think it was gonna be this hard to talk about it. And then they prescribed me pain pills, and this is before like marijuana was legal and people were using it for medicinal purposes. And I look back at it now, and I wish like it would have been legal then, because maybe I wouldn't have had the addiction that I had. But people can become addicted to marijuana as well. At first it was like Vicodin, Percocet, and stuff like that. The norm that they prescribe you, oxys and stuff like that. And as I realized, like it's not really working with me just taking these pills. I unfortunately had a friend at the time. We're no longer friends. He suggested crushing them up and snorting them. He's like, it'll hit you faster, you'll feel a lot better, like instantly. So I started doing that, and it started out just crushing up a Percocet or crushing up a Vicodin, and then I was like, well, what if I mix them, like crush them up and mix them? So basically making a cocktail out of them. So that progressed into that, and it became like debilitating to where like I would run out of my prescribed amount, and I would go and I'd buy them from people, family members included, that were getting, pain pills for their ailments. And that really showed me a different side of like the whole addiction thing. Like it wasn't just drug dealers that were providing these substances, it was my own family members. And I wound up catching a charge in 2013. January of 2013 was when the crime was committed. I was blacked out of my mind because I was drinking at the time too. But, I didn't really drink heavy, but, mixing those substances together wasn't the most ideal at the time. So I blacked out, and I wound up catching an assault first degree charge from a stabbing. Um, I don't remember doing it, but you know, other people saw me do it, and there was video of it and everything. So I wound up, once I was charged, from January of September when I got sentenced, I went completely like just gung ho with the addiction, with the pain pills. I tried other drugs at the time. I never, I never tried heroin or anything like that, but like cocaine. I smoked crack once. It was just, I didn't care at that point because I was like, oh, my life's over. I'm going to jail. My life's over. I didn't know how long I was going to get sentenced to. I was just like, screw it. I'm going to do whatever I want to do. And looking back, it caused a lot of trauma to myself, but also trauma to my mom and my dad and my daughter at the time, who was only 2. She obviously doesn't remember it, but like I could see, like I remember one time before I got sentenced, like I was high and incoherent, and my daughter was just 2 years old, just sitting there looking at me like she didn't know who I was, and that image is still in my brain. So I wound up getting sentenced in September of 2013, and literally had to go into jail. It was just county jail. Just withdrawing, cold turkey, nothing. And sitting there, and I felt like complete crap. And I was just the county jail where I'm at in Maryland, they offered a drug program. It was a unit, it was unit 20. They offered a drug program, and I decided to sign up for it. Um, because they call our county jail a max security county jail. Like nothing comes in, nothing goes out. So you couldn't get anything that you needed that like you would want. So I was in the drug program for about I think it was like 3 months, like 90-day program, and I started reading the Bible while I was in there. My family is very religious. They have their own church, Southern Baptist Church, but I never really paid much attention to it. Um, so I kind of helped gain my faith back through the program because I believe like a lot of recovery nowadays is faith based. And there's a reason behind it. It works.
This episode of the Recovery Couch is brought to you by JB Davis at South Dayton Toyota. For integrity, service, and unbeatable deals, call JB and his team at 513-267-5225 and tell them the Recovery Couch sent you.
And so I was actually sentenced to 18 months and I did 12. And then I got out and I stayed sober, but there was always something wrong with my mental health. Like I was never keeping it in check. Like I would go through really bad depressive periods and I'd be angry about everything. So it led me to continuous law breaking, as I'll say. So I was constantly in and out of county jails across 3 different states just because somebody would say the wrong thing to me and my anger wasn't in check. So I would constantly get into fights or um, violate my probation in Maryland. And it got to the point where I was so bad with my mental health. It was 2017. I had a full on blackout moment and I robbed a convenience store. I still to this day don't remember doing it. I've seen the video footage. You can't tell it's me because I was covered head to toe. But the thing that kind of made me realize it was me was in the video footage, the way the person was walking. I was like, oh, that is me. Because I mean, I know my own gait,
Yep.
and they showed it in court. I took it to trial because selfishly, I was like, I'm not gonna say I did this. I don't want to go to prison. I don't want to get locked up again. And I fought it from 2017. They charged me in 2019. I didn't get sentenced and found guilty until 2021 because of
You were in a
COVID.
county jail. You were in a county jail this whole time.
No, I was on the street. I wish I would have been locked up because they told me if I would have been locked up, I would have been home right from court because of time served. But I was home the whole time. You know, they kept postponing the trial, postponing it because of COVID. They finally sentenced me June of 2021.
So you were found guilty.
Yeah, I was found guilty October of 2020, and they finally sentenced me in June 2021, and they sentenced me to 5 years. And this had been my first time going to prison. From all the times that I had been locked up, it was all county jail time, and so I didn't know what the whole prison atmosphere would be like. And I'd be lying if I say I wasn't scared. Of course I was scared, you know, because you hear horror stories all the time. But I I was in the county jail for about a month, and then the bus came and got me and took me to Jessup, which is, if anybody knows anything about Maryland, Jessup is got a bad reputation. Like, there's been recently in the news, there's been 7 deaths in 2 months, I think, of inmates, and
Killing other
I've seen it.
inmates, inmates killing inmates.
That and potentially guards, like the negligence of the guards, not having proper training or empathy for anybody that's going through anything. And when I say that drugs are rampant in prisons, like, they're everywhere. You can get whatever you want in there more than you can get on the street. So I was subjected to some of the most gruesome things I've ever seen while I was locked up in prison. My second week when I was on intake, and you only come out 1 hour a day, make a phone call, get in the shower. Um, there was a guy that was overdosing in his cell upstairs from me, but they had the grates to where I could see up and see up there. He was a young guy, probably around my age. I heard somebody screaming upstairs, and it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. And I woke up. I look out my little window that I had in my cell door, and the guards opened his door, and they just pulled him out into the middle of the walkway, and they just stood there over him instead of trying to administer CPR, Narcan, whatever. They just stood over him, and it was like 30 minutes later, the medical team came, and they tried working on him for about 2 minutes. That's it, and they literally, I guess, pronounced him deceased right there, and that messed me up. But the thing that really messed me up and kind of like really pissed me off is that they left him lay there for about 2 hours after that, so that like coroners or whoever could come claim the body or whatever it is. Then that was my second week. So it really did a number on my mental health, and it really, because of the experiences in prison, like, it caused me to have PTSD. Um, I've seen people, like, I was on the phone one time when I was in a prison in Baltimore City. They call it B-Triple-C. I was on the phone, and all of a sudden something like warm hit my face. And I was like, what? And it was blood. And I look over, there's a guy right next to me getting stabbed because he was using the phone without getting permission. And they locked us down. And because I had blood on me, and I was wearing a white shirt, so I had like blood trickles, and I had stuff on my face. And because I went like that, it smeared. They put me in handcuffs, and they had me locked in a holding cell, like their segregation unit, for 2 days, trying to determine if I had anything to do with it. And those are the longest 2 days of my life, because what if they don't have cameras that see that? And what if people were sitting there saying, oh, it was the white kid? Um, like, I could get 10 years added to my sentence when I've only got 5, and I'm trying to get parole.
Yeah, and to paint an illustration for, because there's some people haven't been to prison like you and I have. There's an added layer of paranoia when any sort of authority uh, says that they have any sort of evidence against you, because you've been when you've been through the court system, you know that you're typically not getting out of it unscathed. So when you're sitting in that segregation unit for 2 days, anybody in that situation would think worst case scenario. I'm getting charged with aggravated assault or potentially premeditated murder or attempted murder. Those are what I'm gathering from you, Josh. Is those were the thoughts you were having?
Oh, absolutely. They wouldn't let me. They didn't give me any access to a phone. They you're supposed to have 3 meals a day. I got one tray uh each day, and it was just bread and I think two boiled eggs and a glass of water. And they wouldn't let me have any of my personal property, which had pictures of, my mom and my daughter that my ex-girlfriend sent me. I had personal letters that she had written to me that had personal stuff. When I got my stuff back, and I mean, like you said, I don't know if anybody that's listening, they've never been in the system. When you get your stuff back, you feel so violated because they've gone through everything. I got a picture back one time, and it was or I got my when I got my stuff back, my picture was completely ripped in half, and it was a picture of my daughter from when she was like 5. Like, why would you rip that up? Like, there's nothing on there. It's not illegal to have. You didn't throw it away. You left it in there basically as like saying like, yeah, we can do whatever we want. And like, I don't. Not all prison guards are bad. I will say that. Not all prison guards are bad.
But the ones who aren't good scar you. The situations like
Yes,
that scar you for eternity.
and it gives you a bad image of them, and you're just
Well,
like, I don't
you
like them.
struggle to trust authority after that. You struggle to
Yes,
trust any sort of authority after you've been through that. Because I can relate, and that's why I'm saying that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And people, you come out and people think that you're, when you finally get free from prison, people kind of label you as, you know, difficult to uncoachable, difficult to work with, and that you just struggle with authoritative figures because of the fact they've taken advantage of you before.
absolutely. Um,
Sorry that happened to you, bro.
I
Were you locked down like 23-hour lockdown, or were you getting rec time when you were in segregation?
so when I was in segregation, it was 24 hours straight.
So that basically you're in the hole.
Yeah, they didn't let me come out for anything because I think it was because it was investigative segregation because they were trying to figure out uh who was the person that assaulted the other individual. Um, yeah, so I was in there, I think it was like 2 or 3 days I was in there, and I wasn't allowed out. Uh, I didn't have a mattress. I didn't have a sheet. There was no toilet paper in there. Like, I asked for toilet paper and they completely ignored me. Um, yeah, it was rough. Like, that was a really trying time because it was before I started before I went to uh, the mental health unit, or mental health doctor, and said, "Hey, I need to be on something. I need to take care of this or whatever." And I will give them credit for that. They did help me and they prescribed me the medication I'm on now, and it helps with my anxiety, it helps with my depression. It helps me with my everyday life. It keeps me focused and it keeps me, I set a goal out every day and I try to accomplish that one goal every day. And I try to make them easily attainable, so I'm not worrying myself to death when I can't get it done. But yeah, that was a tough time, and that wasn't the last time that I was put in the hole for investigative reasons. Like, I had a time where I moved cells just across the hall, and they came in, did a shakedown that night, and they found a knife in the cell and a lighter, and you know, common sense, you see that the knife and the lighter, they're covered in dust. I just moved into the cell, it obviously can't be mine. But of course, they got to go through their motions, their procedures. So they put me back in that same holding cell, or the hole, and I was there for 4 days, same kind of treatment. Me and my cell buddy that both moved to that cell, and then they come in and we think, oh, we're good, we're going back to the unit. No, they moved us from BCCC in Baltimore to MCIJ, which is now a closed down prison because of how bad it was, which is in Jessup. And we had to sit there for another month before we were even seen by the administrative people for our, I call it a half-assed trial, because you basically go in there and they're automatically assuming you're guilty. And you have to have every piece of evidence that proves that you are innocent. And if they don't like what you have to say, they're going to give you time for it and everything.
Outside time, like they're going to add it onto your sentence, or they're going to give you time in the hole.
They threatened us with outside time, like adding 2 or 3 years because the lighter is considered contraband. So they threatened us with like some outside time. Yeah.
Yeah. So you eventually make it through this stint, and and let's touch on this while we're at it. So you said drugs were readily available in prison. So does your addiction continue while you're in prison, or is this the point in time? Because I know you said in your first when you were in the drug program, that's when you started turning to your faith and reading the Bible. What's going on now that you eventually um, got out, and then you got back into this trouble? Now you're back in prison, and the mental health issues were happening. What was your sobriety situation on this 5 year prison sentence?
I'd be lying if I said it wasn't difficult, but I stayed sober through the
Stayed
whole thing
sober.
because of the drugs that they were doing, and I was seeing such horrible things. Like people were smoking K2. I don't know if you know what that
Tune,
is.
yeah, tune
Yeah.
is what they call it up here.
Yeah.
K2, synthetic marijuana type, but you hear there's all sorts of different chemicals in it, and it's
Yeah, like
yeah,
it's pretty gross. Like I was seeing people smoke that and they would have like episodes, like full on seizures. I'm like, I don't want any part of that. And Suboxone was in there and people were, you know, snorting that. And I would just I would see how these people would be, and I'd been sober for a couple years up until my prison sentence. So I would constantly be like, I don't ever want to go back to that. I don't want to be, and especially in prison, I don't want to be in such a vulnerable state because I've seen what can happen. And I just couldn't bring myself to put myself in a vulnerable state with seeing stabbings and people getting jumped and having their stuff robbed from them in their cell while they're nodding out and everything. That was actually motivation for me to stay sober because I was afraid. I was afraid to get high. And, you know, when I was in, when I left MCIJ and they moved me to Dorsey Run, which is another facility in Jessup, it's like a camp. There's no cells, it's all bunk beds and stuff. They offered the peer recovery specialist program. And at first I was like, that's stupid. But then I signed up. My buddy made me sign my name. And out of everybody in that prison, I think it was like 500 people, the warden handpicked 15 people, and I was one of them. And I went the first day, and I didn't take it serious. I didn't think it was anything. I was like, oh, I'm just going to use this for good days, get time taken off my sentence. When I went in the second day, they were talking about family and faith, and it really hit home. And I was like, all right, I'm thinking about taking this serious. Maybe I can make something out of this. Maybe I can help somebody because, I would want, if it was me, I'd want some help. So I finished the program, and that program is honestly the reason why I got parole, and I only had to do 3 years on five because they saw what that program was, what it
Otherwise,
was
you'd still
doing.
be in today because that was 21 when you got sentenced, right?
With my good time and everything, I would have gotten out the end of 24.
Yeah.
But if
So
I would have
yeah.
done it, yeah, if I would have done it day for day, I would have been getting out June of this year.
So you went to the peer mentor program. You were handpicked by the warden. You start meditating about family and your faith, and then eventually, boom, miraculously, you get paroled.
Yeah, and it was I, when I went to my parole hearing, I had automatically been like, "Oh, they don't give anybody parole and everything." It just so happened the guy that I went up in front of, he had a master's degree in psychology, and I was telling him about this program. I wasn't really even trying to like sell myself for parole. I was just telling him like, I really learned some things since I've been here, and I'm fortunate that I was a part of the peer program. And at the end of our little hearing, like he turned his little recorder off and everything. He was like, I have a master's in psychology, and you seem to be one of the most genuine people that I've ever had one of these hearings with. He's like, I'm gonna recommend that you get uh 9 month release. So they set it up to where you can either get immediate release. Sorry, that's my dog.
It's okay.
You can get immediate release, and it happens within like 45 days, or they give you it's what we call a hit, where they can give you like a 6 month hit, so you'll get released in 6 months. That's if you don't catch any other charges, if you don't catch a ticket. So it's basically like, we're going to give you parole, but we're going to see if you mess up first. So it's, and some guys, they get it and they're like, oh man, they're not gonna let me go home, blah blah blah. So they wind up catching a ticket, like getting caught smoking a cigarette, or um God knows what else. You
Something with
know,
some contraband, and then they get revoked.
right. Right. Or catching a dirty urine from using Suboxone or something like that. So I got my 9 month hit, and then the assistant warden came on the tier, and she told me, like, she came directly to me, and I think it was two other guys. She was like, I know you guys are eligible for parole next month, but and when she said but, I was like, great, they're gonna keep me here, they're gonna deny my parole. She's like, you're eligible for home detention now. So I put in your paperwork for you. It's going up in front of the board. If you get approved, you could be out of here within like 2 weeks. And I was just, what? So I got home detention. They came and got me like 4 days later. And so they came and got me, and I was home. Yeah, I had an ankle bracelet on, but I was home. So it was a great feeling, but it was kind of like bittersweet because it's like I'm home, but I'm still locked up. So still couldn't leave my house, but I got to eat real food, and I didn't have to worry about anybody trying to harm me. You know,
And then what does that look like from there, Josh? Like, I can't help but to draw the parallel with you started meditating about family and faith, and then you get all this good news. You get parole. You see the parole board. The guy was a had a master's in psychiatry or psychology, and he sees the genuine, you know your genuine spirit, and so he gets you, this opportunity to get this early parole, and you get it, and you go on home detention. Like, I can't help but to notice right after you start meditating on faith and family that things just start falling into place.
it felt like once I started getting my meditating on my faith, my family, it felt like I was more grounded in life, and I was able to focus more, and through my faith, like I give it all to him. I I truly believe that he saw that I was working on myself and I was working on becoming, a better father, a better, I'm engaged now, a better fiance, a better son to my parents. And I feel like he saw that hard work that I was putting in. And that's why I'm fortunate to be in the position I am in now, where I can help other men um, to better themselves and to become who they really are destined to be, the image that, whoever their, you know, savior is, who they're being molded into,
Yeah.
and I I count my blessings every day, every day. I have a great career. I have a wonderful fiance. She's the best woman I've ever known besides my mother, because I know my mom's gonna watch this and she'll yell at me.
Smart man.
Right. Keep mama happy.
Yeah.
um, I have two I have two awesome animals. I have my dog Ace, who is an emotional support animal. He sometimes helps me with my clients from other past jobs and everything. He's wearing a cone right now, or he doesn't want to be on camera. Um, um, I have a cat, even though he's kind of a jerk. I love him to death. He keeps me humble. I can never have anything, to myself because he's always got to have some of it, food wise. So, I mean, I'm happy in life for the first time, and I'm 35 years old, and I'm finally happy in life. I finally feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and it it comes out with the guys that, at the program that I work for. I choose to do this career and do this work full of empathy and love, because I understand, you know, programs have their standards. They have their
Rules.
check, yeah, their rules, their checklist that every guy needs to meet. I understand that. That's part of the program. But when it becomes that that's all that you care about, and you're not taking the time to get to know these guys, to see, what they've been through, the traumas that they've had to endure to get to this point, it feels like you don't care. And I feel like showing these men and women that you care, that's the real key to their success in recovery. Because a lot of them didn't have somebody that cares about them.
So they ended up not caring about themselves.
Yeah, or anybody else that comes in their path. Because they say that addicts are really good manipulators, and they had to have learned that it's not something you're born with to be a manipulator. You learn that through your trauma, to be honest.
Pain. It starts. There's a source of pain in anybody, and it's masked through manipulation, drugs, sex, anything to feel anything other than the pain of the relationships that they've lost. Um, it's a pain thing, and I've had to get to the bottom of that too. But so, how do you help that? What do it sounds like, and I agree with this, Josh. Not every recovery center, treatment center is a place of healing. A lot of them are a glorified jail, where you get to go into group and do classes, and maybe the food's a little bit better, but it's a lockdown facility, and most of the people most of the workers that you're coming into contact with are just, um, you know, making you follow rules. And that's not a healing environment. You know the difference between a healing environment. I know the difference between a healing environment and a lockdown environment. And it
Yep.
sounds like what you're saying is you recognize that sometimes when they're just doing their checklist, as you called it, or the rules, as I called it, that the people aren't able to heal their traumas or these pains.
Right.
are at the core of their acting out.
Right.
So what do you do, like as a peer mentor? Like, how do you create a better healing environment for these men?
So the company I work for now, um, it's called Mulligan Recovery Centers. It's based out of Westminster, Maryland. It is a great company. It is a fantastic program. It is about healing. And I don't just say that because I work there, because I've worked for multiple recovery programs. And honestly, this is the greatest one that I've worked for. Um, they allow me to actually sit down with these guys and I get to know them on a personal level, like what their past is. I get down to the root, like I help them without being a therapist and without prescribing and diagnosing. I help them get to the root of their like initial trauma, which really caused them, which could have been the potential cause of their addiction and, their steady downfall. And, a lot of the guys, they're shut off when they first come in. They don't want to talk to anyone. They don't they don't believe that anybody really cares. It's just a cash grab. They're just here for the money, or the program just wants their money. So I genuinely, when a guy first comes in, I don't try to get them to talk to me. I'll go up and introduce myself. I'll be like, hey, I'm Josh. I'm here if you need me. Take your time, get yourself acclimated. Whenever you want to come talk, just come talk. I try to make it to where it's more friendly and it's not forced. Um, and I've noticed that that works a little bit better because I've tried both ways. And I've had guys, it could be 2 days, it could be a week before they actually even come in and talk to me. But when they do, I try to make it as lighthearted and as comforting as possible. Because if I'm just sitting there constantly talking about recovery and, your addiction and what you need to do and get a sponsor, get a service position, have a home group, you're not gonna want to come talk to me. But if I constantly, like, when you come into the like into my office or whatever, like, how you doing? Like, what'd you do last night? What'd you eat for dinner? Or, you know, did you happen to catch the game last night? Or, you know, what video games, what movies have you been watching? I
You make them
open
feel
the comp.
seen. You make them feel
Yes,
seen and heard.
yes, yes. And I feel like if I would have had that when I first started my recovery journey, I feel like I would have done really well. And I think that would have helped with my mental health. But then it's also like a double edged sword because I wouldn't be who I am today.
You had to go through what you had to go through.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then for everything you're saying, right, there's a guy who's mentored me at a point in my life. He used to say, "They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care," and that's exactly what you're saying. Your approach is like, you
Yes, sir.
realize that there's wisdom in that. Josh is, I don't, I know that until they know that I care, I could recite the whole AA big book to them verbatim, and until they know that I care, they're not going to listen to a word of it. And that, yeah, I love that about your approach. And then making them feel seen and heard. Like, no, eyeball to eyeball, man. Like, I'm right here with you, dude. What'd you do last night?
Yeah.
Yeah, was it fun, dude? I love getting out with my kids and going ice skating. What that is such a big deal because a lot of people entering recovery have felt so isolated and alone for such a long time. Josh, we're getting to the end of the episode here, man. And I just want to ask you one last question. What type of encouragement would you give to somebody who's in the early stages of their recovery? Basically, they're just coming like out of jail and they're on probation. They have an ankle monitor on, they don't have a license, they don't have a job, they don't have a girlfriend, and but they want to do better at their life, but all the odds are stacked against them. What kind of encouragement would you give that person?
So there's something I tell my guys, and it's something that my grandfather told me. Think of yourself as a tsunami. A tsunami is created because you had this really traumatic thing happen to you, and that's the iceberg breaking off and hitting the water. It creates that tsunami, it creates that massive wave. You are an unstoppable and uncontrollable force. So that tsunami is going to obliterate everything. So just focus on being a tsunami and do not let anything stop you from obtaining your end goal, whether that be prolonged recovery, whether it be starting your own business, healthy relationships. Consider yourself a tsunami. Don't let anything stop you.
Dude, yep. I'm in total agreement with you. You can do whatever you put your mind to, but that doesn't mean you're not going to have to work hard at it. And it doesn't mean that there's not going to be obstacles in the way. But don't forget what I said first and what Josh is saying too. You can do whatever you want to do. You got to roll your sleeves up and you got to get busy though. Hey, Josh, man, dude, it was really nice chatting with you today on this recording. I'm so thankful for this episode, man. And yeah, dude, thanks for sharing your journey and your story. I guarantee you there's somebody out there that this is going to help, man. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, man.
Yeah.
And again, I love your platform. I love what you're doing. And keep it up, dude.
Thanks, brother. It means so much to me. Uh, it really, truly does. Hold tight, Josh. Don't get off here quite yet. I just want to wrap it up with the listeners out there. Thank you also for the support. Please continue to listen to just such incredible, inspirational stories like this one. Josh has overcome so much: testicular cancer, addiction, prison, and he has turned his life around. And if that doesn't give you hope, I don't know what will. I want to remind everyone out there that you always have a seat right here on the recovery couch. Hey, while you're at it, why don't you go and check out my friends over at Humble Heartbeat? They run a full service publishing company that will bring your idea to publish. They have a book and an accountability coach, and they meet you where you are. Keisha Warren is my publicist, and she has helped me tremendously throughout our time together. So please, go check out our friends at Humble Heartbeat and tell them the Recovery Couch sent you. Wow, what a story. Josh's story reminds us that addiction doesn't always start in broken homes. It can grow quietly through pain and trauma and unaddressed wounding. What matters most is not where the story begins, but what Josh chose to do when we finally see the story clearly. While he was incarcerated, Josh joined a peer mentor program. And today he spends his life helping others who carry stories just like his. Josh's journey is proof that purpose can be found even in the darkest places. If you're listening and feel stuck in a cycle, please hear this. Change is possible, and your past does not disqualify you from a meaningful future. I want to thank you for taking a seat on the recovery couch. And don't forget, like, share, subscribe, comment. Please support the mission. You can help fuel it further. Go check out my book, Step Forward Journey Through Addiction. And always remember that you always have a seat right here on the recovery couch.